Hallo zusammen, einen wunderschönen Montagabend. Ich begrüße euch zu unserem Teeling Whisky Livestream. Hi Chris, it's a pleasure to have you on the stream tonight.
Hey Marika, thank you very much for having me.
So maybe you can say just a few words, who you are and what are you doing at Teeling, so everybody knows who's talking.
Who I am and what we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the short story is I'm the European brand ambassador for Teeling Whiskey. So I normally spend a lot of time in Germany. Looking forward to getting back there this summer for some great German whiskey shows. But my job essentially is focused around brand advocacy and brand education. So I would represent Teeling across many markets throughout Europe. And I'm also based in our brand home, our distillery, of course, which is based in Dublin.
Yeah, great. So so I say hello to all the ones with watching us. There are some already online.
Oh, fantastic. Hello, good evening, everyone.
Yes. And so we will taste 3 whiskeys tonight. So we will start with the new Teeling Small Batch collaboration Dark Porter. Then we will have the first release, Wonders of Woods.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to this because I had that on the Wonders of Woods tasting last year.
Oh,
I attended that online
with
tasting.
Alex and Rob. Was that the virtual one online or was it in person?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a virtual one, yeah.
Cool.
It was really interesting. And at last, we will have our single cask pot still whiskey.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to hear what people have to say, particularly about the single cask as well. Obviously, you know, something special for Germany and special for you as well, I'm sure, Marika. Yeah, do you want to kick things off with the Dark Porter?
Yes. So this is the small batch Dark Porter. And every whiskey has a very nice packaging. So I have that here. So
yeah, we've done a bit of a revamping of the packaging. I think it's very it's something that's very eye-catching that jumps off the shelf, not only in a retailer but also on a back bar if you are keeping any of the secondary packaging. So this particular release, this is part of the Teeling small batch collaborations. Now, the idea is, you know, Marika, I think we've talked a little bit about this series before, but essentially it's doing a variety of cask exchanges with many different producers in the world. So be that, you know, wineries or breweries or even distilleries. And the aim is very much for us to constantly add to our flavor repertoire at Teeling Whiskey. So we hope that this kind of has a bit of a knock-on effect and I suppose changes the image of Irish whiskey and gets people talking about Irish whiskey in a different way. As you know, Teeling is all gung-ho on innovation and experimenting all the time. So that's kind of where that fits in. This personally is one of my favorites. It's not just that it's new, it's actually one of my favorite breweries based in Ireland. They're called Dot Brew. So maybe a little bit less known in Germany. They are run by a fantastically, very, very talented gentleman called Shane Kelly, who basically was kind of a home brewer turned professional, roughly around the same time actually that Teeling set up in 2015. So there's a little bit of a synergy between both Teeling and Dot Brew. We've been working with them very, very closely since the beginning. So I suppose just to give you a figure, since we've set up as a distillery, we've now sent Shane approximately about 50 barrels of whiskey.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's a lot. So he's maturing loads of different styles. He actually has a specialty in barrel-aged beers. So he doesn't brew his own in his, let's say, his own facility. He's what's classified as like a gypsy style brewer, which basically means he brews in many facilities around Dublin, but then he has his own rack house or warehouse in Dublin City. So he's some amazing stuff. Like if you ever get a chance, check out his beers. Honestly, they're still one of my top favorite beers in the world. He's really, really talented. He uses everything from like Calvados, Irish single malt barrels, tequila, rum, and loads of different styles of beer as well. So this was actually the second time that we collaborated with him. We made a whiskey matured in his beer barrels, and he made a subsequent beer matured in our whiskey casks, and released the two products at the same time. So with all these collaborations, even if it's with a distillery or if it's with like a vineyard, we always use the same control spirit for all of these kind of interesting cask experiments. So it's always our Teeling small batch, hence the name, the small batch collaborations. In saying that, it's a little bit different from our core SKU in the sense that it's not finished in rum casks, which anybody who knows the Teeling small batch, you'll know it starts in bourbon and then it's finished in rum. So it's kind of the pre-rum base that we use for all of these, atypical cask finishes. So I don't know if you're tasting it or if you want to crack it open, but essentially you have it there in the glass. Great, yes. So essentially it's 6 years in bourbon and then 12 months in these dark beer barrels.
Okay, yeah, you really get the beer notes on the nose. So Thorsten says already he needs a jar of porter. Yes, so everybody can pour beer whoever he likes.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. In particular, this whiskey works very well with a dark beer on the side. Be that a porter or be that a stout.
I think from the nose also it would work with a good hint of chocolate.
Yeah. Well, I know you were saying to me the last time that you like to do, was it gummy bears and whiskey pairings or some sweet and whiskey? We still have to, we'll make that happen in Schwetzingen. We'll definitely
we will make that happen in Schwetzingen. I will bring some gummy beers. And then the Teeling whiskeys work quite well with gummy beers because when you get fruity notes, then it works very well. So the grain is working good, also the single malt. So we can have a little gummy bears tasting there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll hold you to it. But yeah, I agree with you. It can work with dark chocolate. It's not just those coffee flavors. It is also dark chocolate, roasted grains. Me personally, when I first smelt it, when we were doing tasting notes and we were tasting it just in samples, I actually picked up a lot of citrus as well on the nose. So things like lime skins, or even you get that heavy hops on the nose. It's definitely apparent that you're drinking a whiskey that's been aged in beer barrels. But then once you sort of get down to the palate, it has that typical Irish whiskey structure. It has that lovely creaminess. It's a lot of those ripe fruits like apples and pears. Little bit of spice, not a huge amount. I think it comes through more in the finish. The finish is a little bit more drying and you get more of that dark chocolate. But there's just a touch of ginger or, a little bit of spice in the finish, which I think kind of balances out the sweetness of the palate.
Yeah, it's really interesting because on the nose, you definitely have the beer. When you taste, you get the fruit notes, and then the beer finished the whiskey, something like that. So it
kind of comes back. Yeah, it's almost in layers. And that's why I quite enjoy, these collaborations, is you can see sort of how they intermingle the two, alcohol products. In some cases, when we first put them into casks, they're way too dominant and you kind of need to pull them back and, maybe transfer it into another cask, or maybe even, change it into something else. But in many cases, you'll notice immediately within the first 6 to 9 months the influence from that secondary cask. One of the ones I'm thinking of in particular was, two actually. In fact, one would be the German wine cask. So the Riesling was very prominent in the first couple of months. Even after 3 or 4 months, you could really smell it. Another was the gin cask. So a collaboration we did with Kiro, a great Finnish distillery, and we sought some of their rye-based gin to mature our whiskey in. So, of course, like all of the collaborations, this is 46% ABV. And in terms of the age statement, you're looking at around 6 years old, because it starts for about 6 years in bourbon and then a secondary aging process for about 12 months in those dark beer barrels. And with each of these, they are, of course, quite a limited release. So it's not going to, last on the shelf or on the online store for forever. This we produced around, I believe it was about 12,000 bottles in total.
Yeah, that's not a lot. So yeah, when I think we just had it from the hot weather last weekend, I just can't imagine this whiskey having a very cold beer and then drinking this whiskey beside. So then it's also a really nice summer whiskey.
Yeah, I thought that would be a match made in heaven, like a super cold porter. I
Yeah.
know, so it's funny in Ireland, some people actually prefer to drink porters warm, which I always think
Okay.
is very interesting. Me personally, I'd much prefer them at a colder temperature. But yeah, like having this, as I said, with a beer side by side is such a good pairing, and it's something that I think can actually work for a lot of our range. You know, be that the single pot still or the small batch or any of the core whiskies. This also is the second time that we have collaborated with this particular brewery. So with Dot Brew, we had a release in amber ale casks last year, and then
Mhm.
this is the kind of newest release now available in 2022.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it is available now here in Germany, and it's 45 euros the bottle. So I can definitely recommend it. And I just had it first time now here on the stream. I haven't tried it before, but it's really nice.
Oh no
I
way! Yeah,
really
you
like it.
enjoyed it. That's I assumed that you tried it before this
No,
stream. That's
I like
cool.
to do something like that live.
Yeah, yeah. So you'll have more
And
of a
sometimes
spontaneous
people can see
reaction.
when I don't like, but this is really nice.
No, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I think we can move forward to the second bottling. I think this is a bit more explanation, and I really like the idea behind the Wonders of Woods. So maybe you can give us a bit more explanation what you Teeling think about Wonders of Wood, what they are doing there, and yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, with pleasure. So I suppose there's two things that really excite me about this particular series. The first is that this is the first time that we've released a series using our single pot still distillate. So you know, in previous series like the Brabazon series, which of course was a collection of single malts available in Germany, or the small batch collaborations, which was blended whiskey. None of those really touched on single pot still, and I think that's why this is very exciting. But also, it's kind of opening a new conversation for Teeling whiskey. You know, we have been a brand that's been very well received and very well known for all of its cask innovation. You know, I often say to people, we've got nearly 200 different variants in our warehouse. And now we're starting to, I suppose, scratch away further at the surface of alternative woods. So that's what this new series is all about. You know, we experimenting with different species, not just Quercus alba, not just American oak, but also a variety of different styles, possibly the likes of chinkopin, acacia, chestnut, amberana. These are just a few examples of things that we have in our warehouse. And of course, let's not forget, this is a possibility within Irish whiskey, because our
Yeah.
laws are so loose. There's such a loose classification on maturation laws in Ireland that, you know, we have this room to innovate. As part of this series, it's also linked with our sustainable efforts. So at Teeling, it's maybe not something that we talk about as much on a regular basis, but we do try to reduce our waste as much as we possibly can, you know, which is vital for any distillery based in a big city. So for example, we, you know, reuse our spent grain. We've rainwater harvesting systems. We generate the energy from our stills and repurpose it. And of course, all the different stuff we do with casks to try and regenerate them or repurpose them. But this series, the Teeling Wonders of Wood, it's very much integral to our sustainable projects, in the sense that we're going to be working closely with the Tree Council of Ireland to plant a load of native Irish trees very close to our distillery. So in an area called Wicklow, which, as I'm sure many of your viewers know, there's a fantastic distillery and a great couple of breweries up there as well. And that's part of this particular series. So this is single pot still. You know, if you know the first thing about single pot still, you know it's malted and unmalted barley. For Teeling, this is 50% malt and 50% unmalted barley. So quite a high proportion of unmalted barley, which is very typical to Teeling whiskey. And it's been fully aged in virgin chinkopin oak for a total of about 6 years. Of course, bottled 50% ABV, so a little step up from our signature 46%.
Yeah. It smells amazing. Before we maybe talk more about this whiskey, we have a question. When will you bottle a single malt with age statement? I think from your own distillery.
Yeah, do you know, it's a really good question. And I think, not to be difficult, but we are in the middle of a bit of a transitional period. As many of you know, we've just celebrated a big date at Teeling Whiskey, our 7th anniversary as a fully functional distillery. And we're starting to see a lot more of the new market, or what we call the Dublin distillate, being integrated into our portfolio. So as a result, the Teeling portfolio is very extensive now, with 8 statements from what we classify as our family reserve, aging up as far as 37, 38 years old. And then, of course, the newer stock, which was being distilled in Newmarket in the Liberties. So I suppose the short answer is, I'd say it's a possibility that you might see it in the future. I'm still holding out on the Teeling 10. We're not too far away from our 10-year anniversary. It's only 3 years away. I think it's the perfect opportunity for a decade of Dublin distilling to have something like that could be fantastic. And I appreciate for consumers, it's possibly a little bit easier at times to understand an age statement. But again, if you know the story of Teeling whiskey, the main reason we don't have an age statement on the core range, it's to allow the spirit to evolve. It's to allow us to constantly get better and improve on what we do. And that's why, for example, even the core range here behind me, we have bottle dates for every single batch that you can look at and you can, compare and dissect, as opposed to just looking at purely from an age statement perspective.
Yeah, great. I think 10-year-old Teeling would be very nice.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it? And it's such it's so easily marketed, like Teeling 10. I think it's probably jumping the gun because there's still another 3 years, but I'm holding out on it anyway.
But when you were talking about that, I was like, I really remember the first day I met Jack Teeling in his office in Clontarf. There wasn't even built the distillery, and now the distillery is already 7 years there. So time is running by so fast. It's amazing.
I know it's absolutely crazy, like how quick time has gone. I know we never got a chance to meet in the early stages. I've been with Teeling, I suppose, maybe a little bit less time than you have. I've been 6 and a bit years. But again, since nearly the very start when we started distilling in Dublin in 2015, and to me it feels like it's been about 2-3 years. I mean, maybe people's times, what's the word? Their perception of time is a bit warped, because of the last 2 years. But it's so crazy to see how quickly the time has gone. Also, I suppose just on a side note is the amount of stock that's been distilled within that time. We have, as I said, celebrated 7 years. We've distilled approximately about 4 million liters within that time period. So it's a lot of whiskey. So the great news is that, things like the single cask that, you're trying this evening, or even, some of those core releases like the Black Pits, you'll definitely see more of those products in the future, which I think is great for Dublin whiskey. Yeah,
definitely. There is one more question. Do you also have Teeling whiskey maturing in Mizunara oak casks?
Yeah, it's a great question, Heinz. And the short answer is, we do. So again, this is something that could slot into this particular series, the Teeling Wonders of Wood. As we know, Mizunara, it's very temperamental and very difficult to grow. And as a result, the cost of the casks can be very high in comparison, say, to American oak or even Spanish oak. We have some nestled away in the back of the warehouses. And again, we've tested them on virtual tastings, and there's been a very positive response to even some of the younger stock that now has evolved over the years. So again, this is something that I think could be great for this particular series and gets us talking about these different influences of wood. Opens up a whole new conversation to whiskey consumers and Teeling fans.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I really like, Teeling started more experimental because Teeling small batch finished in a rum cask. When that whiskey got on the market, it was like, wow, a small blended whiskey finished in rum cask. This is something special, and Teeling really stayed there. You always have something new, something different. It's very nice to see, because you are always evolving. You have innovated stuff.
I think it keeps things fresh for us, and again, a lot of the whiskies that we create, the reason that we do them is very much part of our learning process. So, it's less a box ticking exercise or less of a kind of a commercial opportunity and more genuine interest. Like, what is whiskey like when it's matured in Mizunara, distilled the way Teeling does it with white wine yeast and wooden washbacks and our Dublin copper pot stills? What is it like if we transfer that into, aquavit or gin casks? We don't know the results yet. So the constant learning approach is something that's very particular to Teeling. And I think it's how we improve and how we keep our standards so high. And again, that minimal bottling of 46% is such a breath of fresh air, where historically a lot of Irish whiskey will be bottled at 40 or 41, maybe 43%. 46% really carries through that texture, which you pick up, I think, definitely in that first whiskey, in the dark porter. Like, it's very chewy, very thick within the mouth.
Yeah, that's right. Do you ever have a cask in the warehouse where you matured whiskey in and it turned out very bad?
Very bad. It's funny. We've actually been asked that question a lot. And I think, there is this kind of misconception that whiskey is almost kind of perfect, that it goes into casks and that it comes out the other end in a bottle and it's, one and done and that's it. And I'm sure, in reality, it's a lot of trial and error. So there's plenty of examples where, just hasn't worked at the time. And usually the main thing to do is to leave it in the casks a little bit longer. As we know, the maturation in Ireland is quite slow in comparison to somewhere like, say, Israel, where the angel share is much more rapid and the maturation is much quicker and the changes happen so fast. So we can kind of subtly or slowly keep an eye on that whiskey and see if it changes over time. But there's plenty of examples of ones that, didn't work. And then, you look at the last whiskey, the single pot still single cask in sherry. It's just an example. When it works, it works. And it's just the perfect cask. And sometimes these products, they don't fit into the portfolio, or maybe they don't make sense in terms of release dates or in terms of our branding, but they're just a great whiskey that that we love to share.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, it's a good answer, because I think you never know what will happen when you put whiskey in a cask.
No. Yeah. People, there's a reason people refer to it as an art form. You can be so technical about it in the distillery and make sure that, you hit all of your technical points, be that temperature, be that, even your cuts, and so on and so forth. But once you get to the casks, I think there's so many different variants that can change the flavor and change the quality of a spirit.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe we go back to the Wonders of Wood, to the Chinkapin.
Yeah, sure. So again, this is a great example of something that locally worked at the end of the, at least we hope worked. Chinkapin is something that, again, that's quite unusual. So this is something that is possible to use outside of Ireland, for example, in Scotland. But again, this is one of the few examples of a single pot still aged in virgin Chinkapin. I think that adds that extra layer of complexity. So Chinkapin is essentially, I suppose, the same species or the same genus as American white oak. It's grown in many different places around the world. Main areas will be around southern and North Central America. So it goes from, all around the world, places in Canada, like Ontario. You can find it in Mexico, parts of Europe. The main flavor components, or one of the big flavor components that you'll get from it, is this lovely sweet almond flavor. So if you think of like sweet almonds or marzipan, because it is a single pot still distillate, that 50% malt and 50% unmalted barley, again, you get big heaps of spice in the nose, which really nicely balance with that sweetness. So everything from cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, anise, like star anise. And I've heard a couple of people mention things like either chocolate or cookie dough. Now, me personally, I found I had to search for a little bit more, but it is there. It's very faint.
I got cloves.
For me. Yeah, I think there's more of that on the nose, more of that sort of, and also the malty characteristics. The cereal, the baked breads. But it's huge nose. It's very pronounced, even at 50%, and that's the virgin Chinkapin, really giving it that very deep flavors on the nose. You get down to the palate, then it's a little bit lighter. you know, in a pleasant way. It has, again, a lot of those orchard fruits. There's that return of the spices again at the finish, and a really, really long finish to it as well. You know, I've done a lot of tastings with this, not only in Germany, but in other countries in Europe. And I've heard many people say it resembles a single malt, but how long the finish is, even though it has that 50% of unmalted barley.
Yeah. I really like it. I just told you we had it on the virtual tasting Wonders of Wood last year, and there I also really liked it. And the first touch I had with Chinkopin oak was at the Teeling Distillery when you launched a small batch with Chinkopin finish.
Yes.
Yeah. So this
that was one of our distillery exclusives. Yeah, I do remember that, actually. So again, you know, it's not the first time that we've used this style of wood, and it's a perfect example of how we sort of tweaked and rounded the edges by the time that we started to get to other spirits like single malt or single pot still. Single malt as well is one of the biggest or one of the main styles that we produce at Teeling. So both single pot still and single malt make up about 60 to 66% of our production. So it's you know, one of the key styles as part of our portfolio. One thing that I particularly enjoy about this whiskey as well is that higher ABV. You know, I think it was a great decision to have it at 50%. It's still very accessible. You know, it's still consumer friendly for maybe people who, you know, don't drink as much whiskey, or, you know, having their first introduction to Irish whiskey with this bottling, but still packed with flavor. Yes,
and it's not too complicated. And it's like, when Heinz was asking about Mizunara, I personally prefer Chinkopin.
Really?
Yeah, I think Mizunara is a kind of a hype. I do not really like the taste of Mizunara casks. There was never a whiskey Mizunara cask finish where I said, wow, this is really, really nice. But first time I tried Chinkopin, I was like, yes, this is my wood. I really like it.
This is my wood. Jeez, I'm gonna steal that. Yeah, and it's, you know, it's, as I said, this is only looking at the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we can look at in the future. So the idea with this particular series is that this is obviously volume 1, and there are going to be subsequent editions, hopefully coming to Germany in the near future. You can see as well, you know, beautiful packaging design. You'll also notice it's a little bit more sustainable as well. You know, we are aiming in the future towards 100% fully sustainable packaging in the next couple of years. We have other side projects like solar panels on the roofs of our distillery. And I just think that blue and gold is just such a beautiful combination. I'd love to see it more actually in our bottlings. So I suppose it's maybe a good shameless plug to mention that it also picked up the world's best single pot still at the World Whiskey Awards in 2022. So, you know, obviously we're very proud of it as a team. I think it shows, it's a great testament to Alex and all the team's skill and what they do, not only in our distillery in Newmarket Square, but also in the warehouses, you know, which are based about 50 kilometers from Dublin. Yeah, it's really nice. We have, and it's 84 euros. So I think it's a very fair price for packaging and the taste of the whiskey. So it's really good. Yeah, and it's something you'll see quite frequently. You know, it is good value for money, particularly in Germany.
Yeah. So Heinz is asking, do you fill your cask with a specific ABV, or does that filling strength depend on the type and history of the cask?
Yeah, again, super question, Heinz, and I think it's something that's very important. So for Teeling, our average will be around 66, and you're dead right. It's funny you mentioned 63.5 because it does tend to be the industry standard in Scotland. You know, 63, 64, so 66%, a little bit higher. You know, our spirit is coming off the third still for triple distilling between about 80 to 84%. If we're double distilling, it'll be somewhere in the realm of about 50 to 65% ABV. So, you know, for example, with the last one, that's, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Marika, it's 60.8% ABV. That's natural cask strength.
Yeah. 60.8. Yeah.
And trust me, it drinks like it's about 40 something. It's far too easy.
Yes, it's so easy drinking. But this is dangerous. I think when you compare the single cask with the Wonders of Woods. Totally different
entirely.
pot stills, but I think you get a bit more of the ABV at the Chinkapin. I think this is good. That's at 50%, but the sherry goes very well with the cask strengths.
It does, absolutely. And I'm glad you said it, because it's something that I quite enjoy. You know, we are starting to release a bit more stock of single pot still that you'll see sort of peppered throughout Europe. And it's a bit of a breath of fresh air to see things that are just entirely different from, let's say, the core single pot still, which is aged in, you know, virgin American oak, sherry butts, and then also some American bourbon barrels, in comparison to this single cask, which is, you know, full maturation in Oloroso sherry. Two entirely different products, although there are some similarities within the actual distillery. So how this actually starts off is it's again, you know, distilled in Newmarket Square in Dublin in our facilities, 100%. It's made of 50% malt and 50% unmalted barley, all Irish homegrown barley, fermented with some white wine yeast coming from South Africa in wooden washbacks. And for me, this has a key flavor influence on how the final product tastes. And then, of course, it's triple distilled. So with the Oloroso sherry influence, the first thing that I particularly picked up, again, was those heavy sherry flavors, the red fruits, you know, the sultanas, raisins, that nutty quality that you'll get from Oloroso sherry. And then also a little bit of caramel, or maybe even, you know, burnt caramel or toffee on the nose. But at the same time, you will get this either citrus or tropical influence. And me personally, I think that's definitely coming through from the fermentation, coming through from the yeast, which is then, you know, carried through distilling and maturation. So you'll get everything from the likes of mango, maybe even grapefruit, or, you know, orange marmalade, these lovely citrus and tropical fruits kind of combining together with the sherry, which make it so perfect, you know, for this time of year. Even if it's 35 degrees in Germany, it's the perfect summertime single cask.
Yeah. And when I got the samples from you, I didn't know what will come. So we got 3 different cask types, and I don't like sherry whiskeys.
I think you told me this before, actually.
Yeah.
So surprised you chose
it. So there are just a little few sherry cask whiskeys I really like, but when I like one, it needs to be perfect. So when we figured out this sherry cask, you can be sure this is a perfect sherry cask whiskey.
Well, I think there's no higher compliment. That's very kind of you to say, Marika. And I think it's something that we're equally very proud of. You know, that's from Dublin in particular. Again, because it is a single cask, I'm sure anybody who's watching knows about single casks. You'll know it's quite a limited run. So we produced approximately about 300 bottles in total.
Yeah,
bottled at 60.8% ABV. Again, because of that single pot still influence. The nose has those lovely red fruits and a bit of the tropical influence and spice. You get down to the palate and it has a lot more of that European oak influence. So those kind of mild wood tannins, a little bit of pepper as well coming through. And that's definitely that single pot still carrying through the casks. But also, again, that lovely ripe fruits that are very characteristic of Irish single pot still. You know, the apples, the pears, the apricots, and then a little bit of a dryness as well on the finish, which is quite nice. It sort of it goes against what you're smelling on the nose, which is a little bit sweeter. And the finish, big, heaps of malt coming through at the end. It has this again an astringency, but it also has a little bit of a stickiness at the same time. But it's a really great representation of what we're producing right now from Dublin. As I said, we're starting to see a lot more of this integration of that Dublin stock. It's great that a market like Germany that has such an appetite for Irish whiskey and such an appetite for Teeling, it's fantastic that we can, have something like this available.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the kind of sherry I like, because I don't like these very hard sherries, very like just spices, no fruit notes, a lot of sweetness. So And here I think it's the perfect match of pot still and sherry cask. You get the best from both sides. So it's completely different. So I can't show the color. It's the black bottle. Yeah, so this is the bottle and this is the packaging. So I think we have now nearly all types of packaging tonight, what Teeling is doing at the moment.
I was going to say, yeah, there's such a broad variety between the tube, the box, and the carton. It's we couldn't have planned it better.
Yes.
And just like, I suppose, a cool side story on the single pot still. Those are some of, not these exact casks, but I suppose a similar variety. These are some of the ones that we have sent to Shane at Dot Brew. So with the dark porter, he has produced some beers matured in our single pot still whiskey barrels. So for example, at Teeling, we now have a Pilsner, which we made available for our 7th birthday anniversary, which has been aged in these sherry casks. So if you'd like to see kind of the influence on beer, it's also an interesting one to see, because they are some great spirits that we're producing.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, that will be very interesting. So yeah, so I'm really happy that we did the first single pot still whiskey for Germany and that it went out so well. It was 330 bottles. So 2/3 of that are already sold. So
already.
Yeah.
Wow.
So very good reputation. I think in Schwetzingen we will get some feedback how the people liked the whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose anybody who is going to Schwetzingen would love to see you come on up to the Teeling stand. I'll be there personally. Would happily hear your feedback on any of the whiskies, not just the single cask. But anyone who is going to Schwetzingen or German whiskey shows, please feel free to let me know, and I'll make sure to say hi to you.
Yeah, and a good point here is that lots of sherry casks, they have so much sulfur, and this is what I don't like. And it's very hard to find those sherry or sweet wine casks who don't have that too much. So very good quality casks.
Yeah, and look, I think it comes down to one main thing in particular. It's your relationship with your brokers. It's managing the cask and ensuring that you get high quality all the time. It's something that maybe is a smaller part of our overall portfolio. You'll probably see less Teeling whiskies matured in sherry casks. One of the probably most recent one would be the Brabazon Volume 3, which is matured in some PX Spinola. And again, bottled close, but not the same, maybe 49.5%.
Yeah.
That was, I suppose, a limited series. But you won't see many sherry influences from Teeling. So again, I think although it's something a bit more traditional for the whiskey world, it's something that's a little bit more rare for Teeling, which is, again, why I quite enjoy this. Out of interest, what were the other samples that you got? Was it bourbon and wine casks, or what did you receive?
No, it was bourbon and forgot the third one. It was a bit more. I don't know. I will figure it out. I can tell you.
If I had to guess, I'd probably say it was maybe Virgin American Oak and ex-AB casks, ex-American Bourbon and Virgin Oak, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, maybe. So the thing was I really like the bourbon cask because I really like bourbon cask whiskey. But as you say, sherry is more traditional to the whiskey world.
Yeah, for sure. We talk about having a sherry bomb. I think this is a little bit of a sherry bomb. It's different, but it is a little bit of a sherry bomb.
Yeah. So I think we did a good choice, and I really enjoy it. So there are some bottles left. It's 90 euros, and it's cast strength, so a bit more than Wonders of Wood. Yeah,
and as you said, very different, in terms of their cask makeup, but also in terms of the ABV. With that higher ABV, I think it justifies it. They're interesting as well to try side by side. If anybody does manage to get their hands on both, they're, as you've seen tonight, Marika, completely different, but the same distillate in a sense, same mash bill. Yeah,
that's right. So it's very interesting to compare them, and the single cask is also, it's distilled 2016, so it's the same age as the Wonders of Wood, just as an information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was bottled around February, I believe, February,
Yeah.
March 2022.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, great. So thank you very much, Chris, for taking your time.
No, it was my pleasure as always, Marika. It was great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for taking us through your whiskies. And yeah, we will meet finally in person in Schwetzing, and everybody can come to the Teeling stand, to my stand, Irish Whiskies. And I wish all of you a very nice week. And yeah, thank you, Chris, for taking the time and leading us through your whiskies.
No problem. Look forward to Schwetzingen. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.